have, at least for the next 3 years, 33 top GDP countries affiliated to the think tank. Who are the members? The members are research institutes, innovation institutes, learning centers, okay? And we also welcome solution providers that are research-based. So you have to have at least in your team, in your company or in your firm, a researcher who is a PhD that is conducting research to be part of the think tank.
And can you name some names? Are there people that we'd recognize that are part of this?
Well, Lars Haslund is one of the heads. Alfredo de Castro, who just got an ATD award of legendary service for ATD. He has more than 30 years contributing to the learning and development. They are the co-chairs of the International Institute. The president and the acting chief operational officer is Lisa Castro. She's a PhD from Princeton, former MIT researcher, former Air Force researcher, and she is the main articulator of the idea. And we have the former global learning leader of GE, Rosemary Crawford, who is actually the global learning leader for Hilti. As one of the members of the board. We're integrating right now the board of directors too, and we have representatives from 4 countries in the board of directors from the four different continents. And we are right now in the process, Zach Posner has agreed to be a member of the board of directors. So we're building right now also the advisory council, and the academic and scientific council will be different from the advisory council. We will have only PhDs and postdoctoral fellows who will be integrating the academia. And right now we're in the invitation process for some very important organizations that will be embracing this. So what do the organizations and the individuals get? First, a voice in a very good intellectual space to do not only awareness and advocacy, but also take action. We call those the 3 E's of essence. And one is we have to be aware. Second, you need to advocate. And third, take action. Show results. Show that you're doing something. So that is one. Second, you will be receiving, of course, the white papers at first hand before we publish them. You will have the opportunity also to share issues that need and require attention in your country or in your region, so we can assign some researchers to do that and conduct that. You can initiate also research topics with us. So you can say, this is a relevant topic that we need to address, and I want to lead a research on this. So we can get the collaboration of different universities or schools or research centers to assign some funds or some energy and talent to those initiatives.
Excellent. And so I assume you're recruiting for members?
I am.
Including from the private sector?
Yes.
And so who would be, what would be a private sector organization who would get a tremendous amount of value from this?
Well, if it's any organization in the Fortune 500 list who is serious about cultural and cognitive diversity for innovation. Any organization who is very serious about having decent work, about having really a human component in the technological and singularity and robotics transformation that we're having. Any organization who is very serious about the upskilling of their workforce will have a great space here. So those 3 main objectives, without mentioning the rest, the other 10.
Ropes in a pretty large number of potential
members. It's like, if you're serious about diversity, if you're serious about innovation, if you're serious about upskilling your workforce, if you're serious about humanizing your company with all the robotics, artificial intelligence, and digital transformations that we're going to be experiencing, and we're experiencing already, then you will have a place here.
I would think the companies that are on the forefront of these disruptive technologies, whether it's AI or quantum computing or driverless vehicles, these very disruptive technologies that we know Industrial Revolution 4.0 are coming at us very, very quickly. I would think those companies have almost a social responsibility to think through the implications of what happens when their technology changes the workplace.
Yeah, definitely.
Great book from Brad Smith out of Microsoft just came out on this topic. We'll hopefully talk to Brad on the podcast series at some point, but really he's arguing quite uniquely, I think, from a corporate perspective, that we need more guidance. We'll need regulation, and we'll need partnership around regulation if we are to manage these innovations, because they're so disruptive and could be quite difficult.
And that is the space where our think tank it serves a purpose.
Yeah.
Is that we will be one of many spaces that needs to be created, because you think, oh, why another think tank? We have plenty of them. Okay, yeah. Why we have another research center? Well, why we have another startup?
Yeah,
it's like we have a space of people who wants to contribute.
Yes,
and we have a space of intellectuals and leaders
and some critical mass
practitioners to create exactly that critical mass that will allow us to make a contribution. So that is the space where we will be like, hey, how we can connect the right people, and how we can connect new people. Because, for instance, one of the things that we're doing is we're incorporating 15 years old, 17 years old, 18 years old into the advisory council, into the board. We're going to have a 16 years old member of the board of directors.
That's amazing.
Okay?
Yeah, that's great. How can people learn more about the
We're launching our website October the 1st. Is www.click-institute.com. And we're going to have a lot of information there. We're going to have sources of each of the areas, so a lot about cultural intelligence, a lot about cultural diversity, cognitive diversity, innovation, social mobility, upskilling, humanization of digital transformation, singularity. So we will have a lot of content there.
Incredible.
And we will also have one annual event here in Washington, D.C., we're going to gather people from all the countries that are member, and we will be creating also some contribution, tangible contribution in that event, in a social activity and also in an intellectual contribution. So it will be a great space for that.
It sounds like an amazing initiative. What's the business model? Is it a membership fee?
It is a membership fee, and also we're going to be pursuing some grants.
Yeah.
And there are some organizations that have already approached us to have a substantial contribution to help us in the launching of this initiative. And we're welcoming that. We're also getting some private sector interest in saying, we're going to finance that. We're going to give you some capital.
Are L&D leaders from corporations in the frame for the kind of people who could participate in this? Okay.
Definitely.
That's absolutely our audience. So,
yes,
let's drum up some business for
Chief
you.
learning officers, corporate university leaders, researchers, and learning leaders in different type of organizations like government or civic are invited.
Fantastic. I love the work you're doing, and I want to finish with a question that I ask everybody on my podcast. Can you tell me why you do the work you do? Was there a person or an incident or some form of inspiration that prompted you to work in the learning space and beyond that, like move into the situation where you're giving back and contributing to the field?
Yeah. I think that when I make that question to myself, I talk to my mom and my dad, and it says, hey, how I was as a kid.
Uh-huh.
And my mom always remembered that I was always behind a microphone, that I was like the reading, debating,
a performer,
that I, speaking, a competition. So I was always in the reading, writing, speaking and debating teams across the different schools. And when I went to the Navy, I was in my high school. I was writing and the leader of the magazine.
Uh-huh.
Okay, when I went to the Navy, I started to write and be in the sort of the debating team. I created the debating team in the Navy that didn't exist.
Yeah,
we conducted the first speaking competition at the Navy. We didn't have that back in Venezuela, and I was a humble catalyzer of that. because I was a rookie. I was a new year cadet. I shouldn't not even think or speak, in the way that we were trained. So I think it was a natural a skill set that I had. But what triggered my shift from being a business administrator and a person who thought that his career was going to be in business administration was the presence of three people. A professor in college named Candida Luna, a PhD, who challenged me in a class. And after a debate, she asked me, I need somebody like you to be my apprentice. So can you come and do an internship with me in my company? And it was a very famous Japanese company. So I went and I learned so much. And she said, I cannot have you anymore as an intern. Can you open your company? Because I will hire you as a vendor. And I opened my company.
Wow.
And I became an entrepreneur in college. So my last 2 years of college, I was a consultant serving this company while I was studying.
Amazing.
The second person was another professor in that college. He said to me, you're a very good student. If you want more points to get your straight A's and your honor roll, you can come Saturday for an extracurricular activity, and I will give you some points. So I went there just for the sake of the points and the grades, and I went there, and I didn't like a meeting. And he came back and said, hey, how was the meeting? Do you like it? No, I didn't like it. And he said, well, there's a training next Saturday. You might like the training, even though you didn't like the meeting. So this was a meeting of the Junior Chamber International. And that was in 1989. I became the world president of that organization in 2004.
Wow.
And I am still a member of the council. So, and he's living now in Houston. He's an engineer, chemical engineer, that professor, and he is still my mentor.
Amazing. His
name is Giancarlo Piletti, and he is an amazing father and a great role model for me. And he, after I came to that training, he asked me, do you like it? And I said, I like it so much that I think I would like to become a trainer. And then he said, well, join this organization. We have a training track. And I joined the organization.
Yeah.
And I became a trainer thanks to JCI. I became a fellow of the JCI University. So it was these two people who triggered. And the last one was my dad, who was always pushing me, as I said yesterday, to do whatever I wanted to do, not paying attention to who I was, but the person that I wanted to become. And that triggered me. So the influence of these three people in my life made me different.
Amazing. I have one more question for you that I forgot to ask before. In your presentation at the conference here, you talked about 5 diseases that kill innovation.
Yeah.
And I wondered if I thought it was great. We talked a lot about innovation today and how you need diversity on your team, not just diversity of skin color or sociology, but really diversity of thought.
Yes.
If you want to truly innovate and do things different, and I love the exercise that you took us through. But let's talk about these 5 diseases that kill innovation. Can you take me through those?
Yeah. One of them, something that triggers me about cognitive diversity was my interaction with my former CEO, my former leader at Home Depot. His name is Jay Steinfeld. He's a great entrepreneur and a great innovator. And he was always telling me, Fernando, it's not only cultural, it's cognitive. Diversity of thought in our senior leadership team is critical. And I was like, I didn't know a lot about that, even though my background is from cognitive science, and my wife is a cognitive psychologist and a clinical psychologist. So there was a lot of neuroscience in my life.
Yes.
But I was not really paying attention to that component until he started to say, here is an article about diversity of thought. Here is an article about cognitive diversity. He's a very avid reader and writer. So I started to come, which are the blockers in our board of directors? Which are the blockers in our C-suite? And And I started to identify that smart people can be trapped and be unable to really add value in a meeting or in a project or in a process. So I identify some of them. One is what I call arrogant.